Now, the presidential candidates and climate change. Ray Suarez begins with some background.
Senator Hillary Clinton is the latest Democratic candidate to unveil a plan for combating climate change. In a speech in Iowa yesterday, Clinton said she wants to require all U.S. vehicles to average 55 miles per gallon by 2030. It's a move that puts her on a similar track with other Democratic candidates' plans for more efficient cars. Virtually all the Democratic contenders support a reduction by at least 80% from 1990 levels in carbon emissions by 2050, and research and development on alternative fuel sources. But there are differences on how to reduce energy consumption and regulation. Former Senator John Edwards, for example, supports a ban on new coal-burning plants unless they capture and store new emissions.
All the Earth's creatures are threatened by global warming. One candidate for president is doing something to stop it. Chris Dodd. He's the only one with an energy plan that has a courageous corporate carbon tax.
Some candidates have started advertising on the issue. Senator Christopher Dodd released this ad about his proposal for a carbon tax on corporations that emit greenhouse gases.
Because stopping global warming is in our hands.
And Governor Bill Richardson wants the nation to generate 50% of its electricity from renewable resources by 2040.
The planet is getting hotter. This is a fact, not a forecast.
Among the Republican candidates who broach the topic less often, there are fewer specifics across the board. Most want to develop alternative energy sources. Here's former Mayor Rudolph Giuliani.
I think we have to have the view that scientists have, that there is global warming, and that human operating condition contributes to that. We should be supporting all the alternatives. We need a project similar to putting a man on the moon.
Giuliani, along with Representatives Duncan Hunter, Ron Paul, Tom Tancredo, and former Tennessee Senator Fred Thompson, have yet to indicate whether they support any kind of government action to address global warming. Former Governors Mike Huckabee and Mitt Romney say they're willing to consider a cap on carbon gas emissions. Nearly all the GOP hopefuls have opposed mandatory increases in auto fuel efficiency. In contrast, Senator John McCain has been the most specific. He's the lead author of a Senate proposal to reduce carbon emissions by 6% by 2050. He's called for higher fuel economy standards, and he's promised to have the United States join an international treaty on climate change on the condition that India and China join too. All the Republican candidates have voiced support for expanding nuclear power.
To some analysis of the differences between the parties on climate change policy and politics. Gene Karpinski is the president of the League of Conservation Voters. The League is trying to raise awareness of global warming and make it a top issue in the primaries. And Ken Green studies public policy on climate change and the environment for the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank. He's tracking the candidates' position on this issue. And Ken Green, if I were to head out to the hustings and watch the stump speeches, attend some of the candidates' forums in the GOP, would I hear global climate change come up much?
I think you'd hear it come up. I don't know that you'd hear it come up with the same kind of uniformity that you're hearing from the Democratic candidates. I think generally speaking, the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats on this is four things: specificity, uniformity of position, the aggressiveness of the position, and the nature of the response, the approach they want to take to the issue. The Democrats are generally united on this. The Republicans have a broad spectrum of opinion on it, some having not expressed an opinion much at all.
Gene Karpinski, if I were to head out to Democrats' candidates forum or listen to the stump speeches, how often does global warming come up? Are they making a big issue out of it?
Well, there's a lot of good news there, Ray. In fact, all the major Democratic Party candidates make global warming and the related issue of clean energy a top priority in their campaign. If you ask any of them, what are your top priorities domestically, they'll say healthcare and this issue of clean energy and global warming. If you listen to the stump speech, if you're a voter in Iowa and New Hampshire, you listen to the daily stump speech, this issue will come up all the time. It's clearly a top priority, and that's good news. In fact, on the Republican side, Mr. McCain has made clear it's also a top priority. So if you listen to his stump speech in those early voting states, you'll hear him talk about the issue of global warming and clean energy all the time as well. So it is a bipartisan issue for clearly all the Democrats, and that's a change. compared to previous election cycles in terms of the conversation that's happening every day, with this issue being a top priority.
Are the situations that you both just described a reflection of who votes in both parties' primaries? If we ask Republican voters what their top issues are, would global warming come up on the list?
Well, it would probably come up on the list, but I'm not sure it would come up on the list in the top 4 or 5. In fact, environmental issues generally poll in the lower part of the concern spectrum. People are more concerned about local issues, crime and education and so forth. So I'm not sure it would rank as highly. But certainly the Republicans' voters are as concerned about this as Democratic voters, I think. It's the approach where they're likely to vary. And I think everyone has the same sort of, in the states where they're growing corn, you're not going to hear a lot of talk against ethanol. And I think everybody's going to support it, no matter what party they're in, no matter what party they're voting for. So I think the Republican people are concerned about the issue. Whether or not they're as concerned as Democrats, hard to say.
Well, the top 5, Ken Green says not on the GOP side. What about